A journey through the night. The night does not ask questions. It simply arrives, slow and steady, folding the world into its quiet arms. In that darkness, the noise of the day fades and something softer begins to rise, the pulse of existence that has always been here, patient and unchanged. Tonight is not about triumph or loss. It is not about what humans built or destroyed. It is about what remained long after the stories were forgotten, the quiet endurance that lived inside them all. If you listen closely, you can hear it. Beneath the footsteps of history, beneath the voices that once filled the air, there is another sound, slower, deeper, steady. It is the breath of people who never made it into books, who simply lived, suffered, worked, loved, and continued. Their lives did not echo loudly, but they formed the foundation of everything that came after. This journey moves through their silence. It begins in the heart of old London, where smoke and labour filled the sky. It travels through deserts and ruins, through small rooms and endless skies. It does not hurry because the night never does. The night teaches in whispers, not with lessons, but with presence. It says, "You are not separate from those who came before. Their breath is in yours." Every generation has known hardship. Every life has carried its own weight. Yet within that weight was always a choice, to bend or to continue. Most chose to continue, and in that simple act, they gave the world its shape. They are gone now, but their rhythm remains, flowing through every street, every heart that still beats, despite the heaviness of living. This is not a history of greatness, it is a story of quiet survival. It is about how people keep moving even when the road disappears, how they hold on to warmth when the world feels cold. You do not need to understand them. You only need to feel them. Because their story is yours too. Written not in words, but in the calm persistence that carries you through your own days. As the night deepens, the boundaries between centuries begin to blur. The same moon that watched over them watches over you now. The same air fills your lungs. The same silence waits to be noticed. In this stillness, time loses its order. There is no past, no future. Only the long, gentle thread of life that connects everything together. This is not a story to awaken thought, but to quiet it. Do not try to find meaning. Let it find you. Let the words move like water through the spaces of your mind. Let them remind you of what has always been true. That even in exhaustion, there is dignity. Even in darkness, there is continuity. Somewhere, far away, a fire burns. Somewhere, someone breathes, unaware that they are part of this same rhythm. The night gathers it all, the weary, the hopeful, the forgotten, and folds them into one vast silence. And if you listen long enough, you will hear yourself in it too, breathing, steady, unhurried. The same as those who came before, the same as those who will come after, because the story of endurance never ends. It only changes form. Victorian London living with the rhythm of endurance. They lived small lives, but they lived them completely. In the narrow streets of London, in rooms without warmth or space, people woke before the sun, worked through the grey hours, and returned home to do it again. Nothing in their days changed, yet something in them endured. Their world was built on survival, and survival became its own quiet faith. The woman who worked at the mill did not believe she was strong. She only knew that every morning required her to rise, and every evening demanded her to rest. Between those two moments, She existed in a rhythm that felt endless. The walls of the factory shook, the air was thick with dust, and the noise pressed into her bones. Still her hands moved. The body learned to obey what the mind could not question. That too was a kind of peace. There was no celebration in her endurance, no reward waiting at the end of the day. But in the stillness of repetition, she found something solid, the knowledge that she could continue. The others around her did the same. They did not talk about freedom or dreams. They did not need to. The act of staying alive, of moving one thread, one piece of cloth, one breath further, was its own defiance. They lived as the city lived, through persistence, not hope. When her back ached and her lungs burned, she thought of her mother, who had done the same work before her. She thought of the generations that would follow, each repeating the same slow motion of survival. It was not a chain, but a rhythm, one that could not be broken because no one stopped long enough to break it. Even exhaustion became part of that rhythm. It was expected, accepted, absorbed into the flow of the day. In the dark hours after work, when the city began to quiet, she would sit by the fire and feel the heat rise against her hands. The warmth was brief, but it was enough. For a few moments, she was not a worker, not a name on a list, not a shadow moving through the fog. She was simply a person breathing in time with the world. The firelight flickered across her face, and she felt the smallest hint of something like freedom, not from the factory, but from despair. The truth was simple. Life did not need to be grand to be full. Each day that repeated was another chance to remain. Each breath was proof that she had not been erased. She did not wait for rescue. She did not imagine escape. She understood, in her quiet way, that survival itself was a form of dignity. The city did not see her, but it relied on her. The world was built on people like her, invisible, unacknowledged, but unbroken. There were moments when she envied those who could rest, who could stop and think about happiness. But then she realized that in motion there was meaning. The rhythm of her days, the same walk, the same machine, the same tired meal, carried a hidden grace. To keep moving, even without reason, was to keep the world alive. She had no control over her place in it, but she controlled how she met it, with silence, with steadiness, with breath. Sometimes she imagined a life beyond the smoke, somewhere with clear air and soft light. But the thought faded as quickly as it came. Dreams were luxuries, and luxuries did not belong here. What mattered was the next task, the next hour, the next sunrise. There was no tragedy in that, only truth. The world asked her to endure, and she did. That was enough. In the heart of poverty, she discovered a strange kind of wealth. Not in possession, but in resilience. The body could be tired, the mind dulled, the spirit quiet. Yet there was something in her that could not be taken. The will to continue. It was not pride. It was not hope. It was the quiet instinct to survive. And in that instinct lived a kind of freedom. No one could command her breath. No one could stop her from rising again tomorrow. When the nights grew longer and colder, she wrapped herself tighter in her shawl and listened to the distant hum of the city. The sound was low, endless, familiar. It was the same sound she had known all her life. In it, she heard not sorrow, but constancy. The city did not promise happiness, but it promised continuation. And that, for her, was enough. She closed her eyes and let herself drift towards sleep, knowing the morning would come the same way it always had. Grey, damp, alive. She would rise again as she always did. Because that is what people like her did. They did not stop. They did not crumble. They carried the world quietly, one day at a time. And beneath the weight of smoke and labor, that quiet endurance, that small, unspoken choice to keep going, was freedom itself. There were days when the air inside the factory seemed too thick to breathe, and yet she did. She breathed because the body remembered how to survive, even when the mind wanted rest. That, she thought, must be what freedom feels like when everything else is gone. Not escape, but endurance. She didn't have gold or silence or space, but she had a mind that refused to break, and that was enough to keep her human. Around her, people worked until their hands split, until their backs bent and their eyes dimmed. But even in that exhaustion, there was a quiet pride. They had learned not to let the world take everything. The body could be spent, but the spirit could still stand upright, even in silence. She saw it in the faces around her, in the way they carried themselves, in the way they continued without complaint. Their calm was not weakness. It was the last, purest kind of strength. At night, when she left the factory, she could feel that calm settle into her bones. The air outside was still heavy with smoke, but it no longer frightened her. The streets were narrow and wet, and the gas lamps swayed in the fog. Yet each step she took was steady. She no longer hurried to get away from the darkness. She had learned that the dark was not the enemy. The real prison was fear. She walked home through alleys that smelled of iron and rain, through streets filled with other lives like hers. Everyone was poor, but everyone moved with a strange kind of dignity. Poverty had stripped them of comfort, but not of composure. There was something sacred in the way they continued. No rebellion, no despair, just a deep, unspoken patience. When she reached her small room, she set down her bag and sat beside the fire. The flame burned unevenly, weak but stubborn. She stared at it for a long time, watching the way it rose, trembled, and rose again. In that small flicker of light, she saw a reflection of herself, fragile, imperfect, yet unwilling to go out. The world outside might be collapsing, but inside that flame, she saw everything that remained unbroken. She understood then that freedom had nothing to do with what she owned or where she lived. It was not something given, it was something made, built quietly in the space between one breath and the next. It was the ability to remain still when the world pushed, to stay calm when everything asked her to surrender. The days grew colder, the fog thickened, pressing against the window like a living wall. The city groaned under its own weight, horses coughing in the distance, machines grinding without pause. But inside her there was a still point that did not move. She no longer resented the repetition of her life. Each day was another test, another chance to practice peace. The work was the same, the pain was the same, but her response was no longer the same. When the other workers complained about the hours, she listened but said nothing. Words changed little. The world did not need her anger, it needed her steadiness. Anger could not warm the hands, could not feed the children, could not stop the rain from falling, but calm could hold everything together. She began to notice small things she had never seen before. The rhythm of the machines, the faint hum of water in the pipes, the sound of breathing when the factory fell quiet for a moment between shifts. These sounds were not beautiful, but they were honest. They were proof that life continued, that even in the hardest places the world refused to stop. Sometimes during her walk home, she would see a child running through the fog, laughing at nothing, chasing nothing. The sound would rise like a spark, cut through the grey, and disappear. Each time, she felt her heart move, a reminder that joy, too, had learned to survive here, hiding in corners, waiting for someone to notice it. She thought about how many people had lived like this before her. Generations of hands that worked and built and endured, their names forgotten but their strength still alive in the walls of the city. Every street, every bridge, every piece of brick carried their effort. The world, she realized, was built by those who never had time to talk about freedom but lived it anyway. Through patience, through resilience, through the quiet refusal to give up. One evening, as the fire burned low, she found herself smiling for no reason. The sound of the rain was soft against the roof, and the air smelled faintly of ash. It was not happiness exactly. It was something gentler. The relief of understanding that life did not have to be perfect to be worth living. She no longer needed to be rescued. The peace she sought had been with her all along, waiting beneath the noise. Freedom, she thought, was not a door to open. It was a flame to protect, small, fragile, but eternal if guarded carefully. It lived in the way she kept her hands steady while working, in the way she faced the morning fog without fear, in the way she chose not to let the world steal her calm. When she lay down to sleep, the fog outside thickened again, but it no longer seemed oppressive. It was just another form of silence. The city rested, the machines slept, and the fire dimmed. She closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would come as it always did. But this time, it would not arrive as a burden. It would arrive as a rhythm, one she had learned to move with, not against. She drifted into sleep with a final thought, that no matter how narrow her life seemed, no one could touch the space inside her where peace lived. That space was her own. That was where her freedom began, and where it would remain. There was a time when she believed freedom meant release, to be lifted from this city, to walk where the air was clear and the light was clean. But the longer she lived within the smoke, the more she understood that release was not escape. It was endurance without resentment. It was learning to walk through the same grey streets, carrying the same weight, yet feeling something lighter inside. Each morning now began not with dread, but with quiet certainty. She would rise, dress, light her lamp, and step into the day. The routine no longer felt like a cage. It was a rhythm, and she had learned to breathe in time with it. The world still pressed down with all its noise and labor, but she no longer fought against it. She moved with it, calmly, like a leaf that has stopped resisting the current. There were still moments of weakness, of course, nights when the walls felt too close, when the body ached more deeply than the fire could warm. But even in those moments, she found she could stay still. The old restlessness, the quiet panic that once filled her chest, no longer owned her. Pain could stay if it must, she thought. It could pass when it wanted. Either way, she would keep breathing. That simple act, the breath, had become her rebellion. Every inhale said, "I remain." Every exhale said, "I will not break." The people around her noticed the change. The same workers who once sighed between every shift now began to match her pace. There was something about her calm that softened the air. She did not tell them what she had learned. She did not have the words. But sometimes silence teaches more than speech. She smiled more often, even when nothing changed. And because of that, others began to smile too. Not out of joy, but from recognition. They had all carried the same burden, but now it felt a little lighter shared. One night, as the fog wrapped the city in its dull silver light, she stood at her window and looked down the long, empty street. The lamps burned faintly, barely visible through the mist. The world seemed endless and small at once, vast in its darkness, yet close enough to touch. And in that quiet moment, she understood something she had never seen before. The chains she carried were not hers alone. Everyone bore them, and everyone still moved. Freedom was not the absence of those chains. It was the grace with which one learned to walk while wearing them. She thought of her mother again, her hands rough but steady, her voice low and patient. Her mother had carried the same chains, had lived and worked and raised her within these same walls. Yet she had laughed, even in exhaustion. She had sung, even when her throat was dry. Perhaps she had known this truth all along, that life was not meant to be conquered, but continued. The woman smiled at the thought. She sat beside the fire and watched its glow dance across the room. The flame wavered, dimmed, then rose again. Every time it bent toward the dark, it found its way back. That was how she wanted to live, bending, not breaking. The city outside seemed softer now, almost kind. The smoke still hung over the rooftops, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was simply the air she lived in, part of the same world that held her. There was no purity to be found elsewhere, no better sky waiting beyond the fog. Life was not what it could be someday. It was what it already was, here, within the limits she had once feared. When she walked to work the next morning, she noticed the smallest things. The way the lamplight clung to the puddles, the faint hum of the river beyond the bridge, the pattern of footsteps that matched her own. Everything moved in rhythm, and she was part of it. For the first time, she did not feel trapped in the city. She felt held by it. The factory sounded the same, metal, breath, motion. But her heart no longer beat against it, it beat with it. The repetition of the machines had its own rough beauty, a mechanical heartbeat reminding her that all existence, even toil, was rhythm. The work still hurt, but it was no longer meaningless. It was a practice, a way to steady the mind, to polish endurance into peace. During the short break, she shared her bread with a younger girl who had just begun working there. The girl's hands trembled from fatigue. She reminded the woman of herself years ago, afraid and unsure. Without saying anything, she placed the bread in the girl's hands. The girl looked up, startled, then smiled. It was such a small thing, and yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. In that moment, something inside her shifted again. She realized that freedom could be shared, that the calm she had found was not hers to keep, but to pass on. That night, as she walked home through the fog, she heard music somewhere far away. A violin, perhaps, playing behind closed doors. The sound was faint, fragile, almost lost in the hum of the city. But it reached her, and for a brief second, the world felt weightless. She stopped and listened. The melody rose and fell, soft as breath, then disappeared into the smoke. But it was enough. Beauty, she realized, didn't need to last to be real. It only needed to exist once, and she had been there to hear it. When she returned home, she didn't light the fire immediately. The room was dark, but she let it stay that way. In the dimness, she could hear the rain against the window, the steady rhythm of the city breathing outside. She closed her eyes and sat in silence, feeling time pass without asking for anything. For the first time, she felt what she could only call peace, not joy, not relief, but the deep quiet that comes from knowing she no longer had to chase meaning. The flame, when she finally lit it, burned low and even. Its light reached across the room, touching the walls, the chair, the edges of her worn shawl. She looked at it and thought again of all the days behind her, the pain, the work, the endless grey. It all remained, but it no longer hurt. Everything had changed, though nothing was different. She understood now what her life had been teaching her all along, that freedom was not waiting on the other side of hardship. It was born inside it. That the chains she carried had always been part of the path, not obstacles on it. And that to walk with grace beneath their weight was the truest kind of liberation. She smiled faintly, her eyes half closed, and whispered to herself a thought that came and went like wind. Freedom is not the lifting of chains, but the art of walking while wearing them. Then she leaned back, listening to the soft hum of the city, the endless low breathing of life itself, and let the night close gently around her. Labor, children, and the endurance of humanity. The world of work moved in circles, endless and unbroken. Every person, no matter how young or old, was caught inside its turning. The city did not allow anyone to stop. The bell rang, the machines began, and the rhythm swallowed everything. It was not a rhythm of purpose or glory. It was the rhythm of staying alive. The woman at her loom did not think of the future. The future was a word for other people. Her life existed inside the slow repetition of each motion, lifting, turning, threading, pulling. The same gestures, the same sound, the same ache in her hands that never left. Around her, dozens of others moved in the same pattern, like waves that rose and fell, but never reached shore. No one was a hero, no one tried to be, but everyone in their small way held the city together. The factory floor was a place where time lost its edges. Hours blurred, the windows above were grey with soot, even daylight looked like twilight. Yet within this dimness, there was a kind of discipline, not chosen, but inherited. The work began, and so it continued. Breathing, moving, existing, it was all the same act. When the overseer's voice cut through the hum of machines, it barely mattered. The body kept moving. The body knew what to do. It had learned the language of survival, where obedience was not surrender, but endurance. The woman's thoughts drifted as she worked, not to dreams or plans, but to the steady pulse in her wrists, the weight of her breath. That pulse was proof that she remained, that even here, in the noise and the heat, something inside her still belonged to herself. Children worked beside adults. Their faces were pale and still, their small hands quick and sure. The factory did not care about age, it cared only about rhythm. Some of the children hummed softly to keep time, their voices barely rising above the noise. It was not a song of joy, but of existence, a thin thread of sound to mark that they were still here. Lunch came without ceremony. A bell rang, and the noise stopped like a cut in the air. Workers sat on the floor or leaned against walls, unwrapping bread that had been baked days before. They ate slowly, almost silently. There was no talk of dreams, no laughter about the future. They chewed, swallowed, and rested their eyes on the floor. The quiet felt strange after the hours of clamour. It was not peace, but a pause, a place where the body remembered itself for a moment before returning to motion. When the bell rang again, everyone rose. The machines roared back to life, and the world resumed its turning. The woman felt the familiar ache return to her shoulders, but she no longer resisted it. Pain was not an interruption. It was part of the music. It reminded her that she was alive enough to feel. As the day wore on, she thought of her father, who had worked in the same way, and of her mother, whose hands had shaped the same threads. Their lives had not been grand, but they had lasted. That was all that mattered. There was dignity in that, a quiet, invisible kind that no one celebrated, but that built everything the world stood on. The city outside the factory walls thrummed with the same pulse. The carriages, the markets, the bridges, all of them depended on this hidden rhythm of hands that never stopped. The woman sometimes wondered what the world would look like if everyone stopped for a single day. Would it collapse, or would it breathe? But the thought passed quickly. Thinking changed nothing. Action, even small, monotonous, necessary action, kept everything alive. When the workday ended, the world outside felt strange, almost hollow. The noise of the factory lingered in her ears and silence felt too wide. The fog hung low over the river, the lamps glowed weakly, and the sound of her footsteps echoed off the stones. Around her, other workers walked home in quiet lines, each carrying their weariness like a shadow. No one spoke. They did not need to. Each understood the other completely. Back in her small room, she washed her hands and looked at them under the light, the small cuts, the worn skin, the faint tremor that would not fade. These were her stories, written not in words, but in the texture of survival. She was not proud, but she was not ashamed either. She had done what needed to be done. She sat by the window for a while, watching the fog drift past, and thought about the meaning of work. Not the kind written about in books or speeches, but the kind that fills the space between waking and sleep. The kind that asks for everything and gives nothing back except the right to begin again tomorrow. And yet, in that repetition, she found something steady, something that felt almost sacred. Work was not punishment, it was proof. Proof that she could endure, that she could move when there was no promise of rest, that she could create meaning simply by continuing. The world of labor was not built on triumph, but on persistence. It was a circle that never closed, a rhythm that belonged to no one and everyone at once. And though no one noticed her as she worked, though no one remembered her when she left, the rhythm would remain. The quiet, ceaseless heartbeat of those who lived not for glory, but for life itself. She used to think that strength meant shouting, fighting, or demanding change. But as the years passed, she began to see that real strength made no sound. It was not the sudden fire that burned everything bright and brief. It was the slow flame that kept burning even when the wind grew cruel. The people around her were full of that kind of quiet strength. They did not seek recognition. They did not wait to be thanked. They worked, rested, and returned again, like the tide, moving forward because standing still was never an option. There was a man who worked beside her, older than most, with hair turned grey from dust. He never spoke loudly. His shoulders were bent, his movements slow, yet precise. When a machine broke, he fixed it without complaint. When a child struggled to keep up, he reached over, helping without a word. Once, when the belt jammed and everyone froze, it was his calm hands that untangled it. No one cheered. The bell rang, and they returned to work, but she watched him for a long time afterward, realizing that what looked like resignation was actually grace. He did not resist the world. He moved with it. And that, she thought, was how one survives without losing oneself, not by conquering the storm, but by learning to walk inside it. The woman carried that lesson quietly. She stopped measuring her worth by exhaustion or complaint. The world would always be heavy, but the way she held it could change. She began to work with rhythm, not against it. The noise of the machines became less an enemy, more a heartbeat. The ache in her hands became familiar, like an old companion. Each evening, when she left the factory, she no longer felt defeated. Tired, yes, but not broken. The difference was subtle, but it changed everything. The exhaustion was real, but beneath it was something firmer, something still standing. That invisible core, the will to remain kind, to keep breathing, to refuse bitterness, was what the world could never take. On her way home, she often passed a baker's shop. The air outside always carried a trace of warm bread, soft and sweet against the chill. She never had money to buy it, but the scent alone was enough to remind her that beauty still existed in small forms. It was not something to own, it was something to notice. And in noticing, life became gentler. At home, she would take off her shawl, sit by the small fire, and look at her hands. They were rough, the skin torn in places, but they still worked. They still moved with purpose. That, she told herself, was strength. Not the loud kind, not the kind written in stories, but the kind that endured quietly, the kind that kept the world turning while no one looked. The days continued their slow circle, the fog, the noise, the labor. Nothing changed, yet everything within her was changing. She no longer waited for rest to feel peace. She found it in motion, in the steady breath between tasks. Peace was not the absence of work. It was the calm she carried while working. One night, she dreamed she was standing in the middle of the factory floor. The machines were silent. The air was clear. The walls shimmered with light. She looked around and saw every worker. The children, the old man, the women beside her, all standing still, breathing together in the quiet. There was no pain, no noise, no command. Only stillness. Then, slowly, the sound of machinery returned, but softer this time, almost like music. The rhythm was no longer harsh, it pulsed like a heartbeat. And when she woke, she realized it had always been that way. The world had not changed, her hearing had. In the morning, she rose before dawn as always. The air was cold, the water colder, but she no longer dreaded the day. She knew what waited for her, not freedom in the grand sense, but the quiet dignity of doing what she must. The city might not see her, but she saw herself. The small fire, the steady breath, the strength to begin again. These were her victories. The people in her world did not carry banners or speak in crowds. Their greatness was measured in how gently they bore what they could not change. They did not call it courage, but it was. Every day survived was a form of bravery. Every day endured was a silent declaration. We are still here. She understood now that endurance was not a burden to be pitied. It was a craft. Learned slowly, shaped over years, perfected in silence. It required patience, balance, and a heart that refused to harden. Anyone could shout once. Few could stay soft after a lifetime of noise. As she lay in bed that night, she thought of all the faces she saw each day, the tired, the quiet, the unnoticed, and felt a warmth rise in her chest. She was one of them, and they were all bound by the same invisible thread, the will to continue without applause. She smiled in the dark, a small, steady smile. The city outside breathed its smoky breath, and she breathed with it. The world was not kind, but it was alive, and so was she. Each day, each quiet victory, each moment of calm endurance was a message left to the future. Proof that even when choice disappears, dignity does not. The strength that never needed to be seen was the one that carried everything forward. There were mornings when she woke before the first bell, lying still in the half-dark, listening to the world gathering its weight again. The sound of carts outside, the cough of a neighbour, the small creak of the floor, all reminders that the rhythm had already begun. She didn't rush anymore. The urgency had faded, replaced by something steadier, almost gentle. Life was not a race to finish. It was a path to walk, one quiet step at a time. At the mill, her hands found their motion without thought. The wooden floor shook, the air trembled, and yet her mind moved slower than everything else around her. She was beginning to understand that action didn't always need to produce change. Sometimes, continuing was the most radical act. Every time the shuttle passed through her fingers, it tied her to something older and larger than herself. Generations of endurance, the invisible architecture of human persistence. Around her, the faces of the other workers had softened too. They were still tired, still worn, but their eyes no longer looked only downward. Perhaps they had learned the same lesson she had, that even the smallest continuation was proof of life. The girl beside her dropped a spool once and whispered an apology. She smiled and helped pick it up. The gesture was nothing, yet it mattered. They both returned to work a little lighter. The overseer shouted once, impatient. The woman didn't flinch. His anger, once sharp as metal, now sounded distant, almost pitiful. She knew he too was trapped inside the same wheel. Everyone was. The difference was how they carried it. Some cursed the weight, others learned to balance it. That balance, she thought, was the closest thing to freedom the world allowed. During breaks, she sat by the open door of the factory, feeling the cold air on her face. She didn't think of escaping anymore. The thought had lost its urgency. Freedom wasn't waiting somewhere else. It was already present, hidden inside the breath she took without asking permission. To breathe without bitterness, that was liberation enough. When the shift ended, the city met her with its usual grey. The fog hung low, swallowing sound and colour alike. Yet she found beauty in it now. The way the lamplight glowed through the mist reminded her of people, blurred, imperfect, but luminous all the same. The river moved quietly beside the street, slow but unstoppable. She saw herself in its surface, worn, patient, flowing forward without hurry. Back in her small room, she lit the lamp and warmed her hands above the flame. She no longer needed the fire to chase away darkness. She only needed its presence. The silence inside the room felt alive. For a long time, she simply listened to the breathing of the house, the faint tick of the clock, the heartbeat inside her own chest. The world was still noisy, still unkind, but in this small space, she had carved out a rhythm that belonged to her. She began writing small notes on scraps of paper. Not letters, not prayers, just fragments of thought. Words like continue, breathe, wait, softly. She kept them under the lamp, reading them sometimes before sleep. They were not instructions, only reminders of what she already knew. That meaning grows in repetition, not escape. One evening, she met the older man from the factory again on the street. They exchanged only a nod, but she noticed how his walk had slowed, how he leaned slightly into the wind. Still, his eyes were clear. She thought, he's tired, but not broken. He's still walking. And she realized that this was how the world went on, not through triumph, but through the quiet persistence of people who refused to fall. That night, she dreamt of the factory again, but it was silent this time. The machines stood still, shining faintly under an unseen light. The workers were gone, and yet the room felt full. She walked through it slowly, touching the smooth wood, the cold metal. The silence did not frighten her. It felt like rest. When she woke, the dream stayed with her, not as a vision of escape, but as a memory of peace. The morning after, she worked as always, but something within her had settled into stillness. She no longer searched for proof that her life mattered. She no longer waited for the world to change. She knew that her presence, her small, consistent act of doing, was already enough to shape the quiet edges of the world around her. When the final bell rang that day, she left the factory slower than usual. The air outside was damp, and rain began to fall. Soft, hesitant drops that darkened the cobblestones. She walked without shelter, letting the rain touch her face. It felt clean, almost kind. For once, she didn't hurry home. The city, grey and endless, opened gently before her. Every step felt like an affirmation, every breath a promise to remain. And in that walk, through fog, through rain, through the ordinary rhythm of the evening, she felt a freedom deeper than flight. It was not something anyone could give or take. It lived quietly in her endurance, in her calm, in the steady beat of her heart as she kept moving through the world. Disease, environment, and acceptance. There are days when the body refuses to obey. Days when the breath feels too shallow, when the bones seem older than they should be, when even standing still becomes an effort. She has known those days too. The cough that lingers, the ache that grows heavier after each shift, the quiet fear that one morning she might not have the strength to rise again. But she rises anyway. Not because she feels strong, but because living is an instinct that speaks even when the mind is silent. Sickness does not come to punish, it comes to remind her that she is made of flesh, not stone, to remind her that the body, like the city, wears down with time, but still keeps moving. The pain is not a sign of failure, it is proof that she still exists in the world of the living, that something within her still fights to keep breathing, even when breath itself becomes work. On those mornings, she moves slower. The floor feels colder, the air thicker. Her hands tremble as she ties her shawl. Her head swims for a moment before she steadies herself. The world does not wait, but she no longer asks it to. She has learned that weakness is not shameful. It is simply another language of the body, a quiet whisper that says, "Be gentle." When she walks to the mill, the street feels longer than usual. Every step weighs a little more. But she keeps walking, her eyes on the mist ahead. There is comfort in the rhythm of movement, in the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. She thinks of all the people before her who did the same, through fever, through hunger, through age. They too must have known this feeling, that to continue is to defy the limits written into the flesh. The factory air burns her throat. The dust clings to her skin and the noise feels sharper than usual. Still, she takes her place. The machines begin to hum and her hands find their old rhythm. The first few minutes hurt. The muscles stiff, the breath uneven. But the motion itself begins to carry her. Movement becomes medicine. Work becomes the way through pain. Sometimes she wonders if the body remembers more than the mind. If it knows, even when everything hurts, how to keep her alive. She thinks of the heart. Small, hidden, beating without permission or command. It has done so since before she understood its purpose. It does not ask for comfort. It just continues. In the pauses between shifts, she feels the ache settle deep into her bones. She sits quietly, hands folded, and listens to her breath. The cough rises again, sharp and dry, echoing in the dim room. She waits for it to pass. It always does. The others do not look at her. They are all fighting their own invisible battles, the pain of joints, of hunger, of fatigue. No one speaks, but everyone understands. Survival here is a collective silence. There are moments when fear flickers, the fear that the sickness will grow, that one day she will not return. But she lets it pass, as she has learned to let all things pass. Worry changes nothing. The body will do what it must. Her task is simply to follow, to listen to its rhythm, to care for what still functions. When she drinks water, she feels it cool her throat like kindness. When she eats bread, she feels the texture, dry but real. These small sensations remind her that she is still part of the living world. At night, the pain softens, replaced by a dull fatigue that feels almost peaceful. She lies on her back and lets her hands rest against her stomach, feeling the slow rise and fall. The sound of the city fades, only her breathing remains. She counts each inhale as if it were a promise. One more moment, one more day, one more chance to remain. The body may fail, but it does not surrender easily. It bends before it breaks, and even in breaking, it still tries to heal. She sees this every time a wound closes, every time a cough quiets, every time the fever leaves. Life repairs itself in secret. It does not need to be told how. She no longer prays for health. She prays only for patience. Patience to move through pain without bitterness, patience to accept weakness without fear. She has learned that the body's limits are not walls, but thresholds. Each pain endured expands her understanding of what it means to exist. There is humility in that realization, and also freedom. When she wakes again, the light is pale, the air heavy. Her bones protest as she stands, but she smiles faintly. The pain is familiar now, like an old companion who no longer frightens her. She dresses slowly, wraps her shawl tighter, and steps out into the morning. The city greets her the same way it always does. Cold, indifferent, alive. And as she walks through it, she feels her breath steady again, the cough easing, the body remembering how to move despite itself. The world, for all its harshness, allows her this small grace, another day to endure, another day to be. Pain, she thinks, is not the enemy. It is the echo of life itself, a reminder that she is still here, still breathing beneath the smoke and the sound, still part of the long, fragile miracle of survival. The illness did not disappear. It never truly does. It comes and goes like weather, and she has learned not to fight it, only to move with it. Resistance wastes the little energy she has. Acceptance saves it. When the fever rises, she stays still and listens. When her breath shortens, she slows down. The body, she realizes, is not an enemy. It is a messenger, soft-spoken but firm. It tells her what it needs: rest, warmth, patience. And for the first time, she listens. There was a time when she would have cursed her weakness. Now she sees it differently. Illness is not punishment. It is a teacher. It has taught her how small she truly is, how fragile and how precious that fragility can be. It has taught her that control is an illusion, and peace begins where control ends. The world can be cruel, indifferent, unpredictable, but she still decides how to meet it. That is the one freedom no pain can take, so she meets each day as it comes. Some mornings she wakes with strength and works easily. Other mornings she can hardly move, and she allows that too. She no longer calls those days wasted. A day spent breathing, watching the light change across the wall, feeling her heart move in her chest. That she has decided is not wasted at all. The city outside remains restless. People hurry through the fog, chasing wages, food, warmth. The sound of footsteps echoes like rain. She used to feel the world's pace pressing against her, urging her to keep up. Now she walks slower. The world rushes past and she lets it. For the first time, she does not feel behind. She feels in time. When she returns home, she sits by the window with her cup of tea and lets the steam rise into her face. The warmth is a small mercy, but it is enough to remind her that life is still kind in small, deliberate ways. She doesn't expect fairness anymore, only moments like this, where she can feel quiet within the noise. One afternoon, as she rests, the rain begins to fall. Soft at first, then steady. It patters against the window and pools along the street. She watches without thinking. The world cleanses itself this way, she thinks. The sky grows heavy, then releases. So does the heart. There is no shame in breaking down. It is how things stay whole. When the cough returns, she no longer fears it. She sits still and lets it pass through her. The pain crests and fades like a wave, and afterward, there is a strange calm, as if something old has been washed away. She realizes that suffering too has its rhythm, and if she listens closely, even pain can become part of life's music. The people around her still fight their pain. They drink, curse, grow bitter. She understands them. She once did the same. But she has learned that anger exhausts faster than illness. The more you fight what cannot be fought, the deeper it takes root. Acceptance is not surrender. It is clarity. It is the steady voice that says, "This is happening, and I remain." That quiet thought becomes her anchor. Whenever the world shakes, when machines break, when the overseer yells, when her body fails, she returns to it. It holds her steady the way a rock holds its place in the current. The current can be violent, but the rock does not need to fight. It simply stays. And in that stillness, she begins to notice something she had missed before. Beauty. Not the bright, fleeting kind found in comfort, but the kind born from endurance. The beauty of a hand that still works despite its scars. The beauty of a face that still smiles though the eyes are tired. The beauty of a world that keeps turning, quietly, under the weight of its own imperfection. At night, she no longer prays for the pain to end. She prays only for peace within it. Sometimes, lying in bed, she thinks of all the people sleeping in rooms like hers, coughing in the dark, whispering to themselves, waiting for morning. She imagines their breaths rising together like smoke, blending into one soft cloud above the city. And she feels connected to them, bound not by strength, but by the shared act of surviving. There is a gentleness that comes with this kind of understanding. She becomes kinder without trying to be. When a child spills a spool at work, she helps quietly. When someone complains, she listens without judging. She knows now that everyone is fighting something invisible. Everyone carries a storm. To be gentle, then, is not weakness, it is wisdom. The days pass in their slow grey rhythm. Some are harder than others, but she no longer measures her life by how much she suffers or how little. She measures it by her calm, by the space she keeps between what happens and how she reacts. That space is her sanctuary. No matter how loud the world becomes, she knows she can return there, to the still point within herself where no noise can reach. One evening, as she watches the light fade, she feels the cough rise again, sharper this time, cutting through the quiet. She closes her eyes, waits, and breathes through it. When it passes, she opens her eyes to the pale glow of the lamp. The air feels heavy but gentle. She thinks of how many storms she has already survived, how many will still come, and how she will meet them, not as an enemy, but as a guest. The night deepens and the city hums its tired lullaby outside. She lies down, feeling her pulse slow beneath her skin. Pain, exhaustion, calm, all of it belongs to the same song. She no longer wants to escape it. She only wants to listen, to let it play until morning. And as her eyes close, she realizes that peace was never the absence of suffering. It was the quiet way she had learned to sit beside it, breathing evenly, unafraid. There are limits that the body sets, and there are limits that the soul learns to respect. She has discovered both. At first, she fought them, believing that strength meant pushing past every wall. But walls exist for a reason. They are not there to punish, they are there to shape. Without them, she would lose her form, her rhythm, her balance. Now she accepts that some days are meant for doing and others for simply being. When her body aches, she rests. When her mind feels heavy, she allows silence to cover it. The city can rush without her, the machines can roar without her. She has earned the right to pause. That pause does not make her weak. It makes her whole. She has come to see weakness not as failure but as language. It is the body's quiet way of asking for compassion. Once she ignored it. She worked through pain until the pain became invisible. But invisible things never disappear, they only deepen. Now, when her hands tremble or her breath falters, she listens. That listening itself is a kind of kindness, an agreement between her and her body. I will not force you beyond what you can bear. From that kindness grows something else, gentleness toward others. When she sees an older worker struggling to keep up, she slows her pace to match his. When a child drops a spool and looks afraid, she bends to help before he can be scolded. None of these gestures are grand, but they matter. In a world that demands endurance, gentleness becomes an act of quiet rebellion. The lesson has reached beyond the factory, beyond illness, beyond survival. It has reached into the way she looks at the world itself. She no longer divides it into strong and weak, winners and losers. She sees only people, breathing, carrying, trying. Each one caught in their own struggle with weight and time. And in seeing that, she feels less alone. There are evenings when the pain returns, sharp and familiar, like a voice calling from the past. She does not fight it now. She prepares tea, sits near the window, and lets it stay. The pain speaks, but she does not answer. She listens until it grows quiet again. That silence afterward feels deeper than comfort. It feels like peace earned through patience. She remembers her mother once saying, "Nothing lasts forever, not joy, not sorrow." She did not understand it then. Now she does. Everything moves in cycles, work and rest, health and illness, loss and renewal. The trick is not to resist the turning, but to move with it, to let life change shape without losing its core. That core, she knows, is the part of herself that can observe even pain without collapsing under it. The more she practices this stillness, the lighter she feels. Her world has not changed. The factory still looms, the air still fills with soot, her body still bends beneath its tasks. But the weight no longer owns her. She carries it the way one carries a sleeping child, gently, carefully, without anger. Sometimes when she wakes in the middle of the night, she lies still and listens to the city breathing. The rain taps against the window, the pipes hum, and beneath it all is that low, endless pulse, the sound of life continuing. She feels her own heart beating in rhythm with it, and she understands. She is part of this great, fragile system of endurance. Every breath she takes keeps something alive, not just herself, but the pattern of persistence that binds everything together. There is a quiet joy in that realization. Not happiness in the bright sense, but the deep satisfaction of belonging. To be fragile is not to be lesser. It is to be connected. The weak understand tenderness better than the strong. The weary understand peace better than the restless. The ones who have fallen learn to walk with care. And in that carefulness, there is wisdom. She no longer wants to conquer the world. She only wants to meet it gently, to greet each day no matter how heavy, with the same soft voice that she uses to comfort herself. To say, "We will do what we can today, and that will be enough." The fire burns low beside her, the light trembling softly across the walls. She watches the flame flicker, bending, shrinking, returning. It never holds one shape for long, yet it endures. The flame, too, knows its limits. It cannot burn endlessly. It must rest, dim, and rise again. In its rhythm, she sees her own. The night grows quiet. She closes her eyes and feels the ache settle into something bearable. It is not gone, but it is softer now, a part of her that no longer frightens her. She breathes once, deeply, and with that breath she forgives herself for all the years she mistook fragility for failure. Weakness, she has learned, is not the end of strength. It is its beginning. She smiles faintly in the dark. Tomorrow will come, and with it the same tasks, the same air, the same grey streets. But she will face them differently, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a life to be lived. To know her limits is to know where peace begins. To walk through pain without rage is to find freedom. And so she rests, not victorious but whole, her heart steady, her breath quiet, her spirit light. The Desert Castle, Creation and Solitude. In the desert, there are no borders. The land stretches until it blurs into light and the sky feels close enough to touch. Yet here, where there seems to be nothing, people once decided to build. They gathered stones from the endless sand, mixed clay with their hands, and began to shape walls that could hold a shadow. They built not because they needed shelter, but because they needed proof. Proof that existence could take form, that emptiness could be touched and changed. Every strike of the hammer, every lifted stone was an act of conversation with silence. The desert gave them nothing, and in return they offered its shape. The heat erased their footprints by dusk, but the walls remained, calm, precise, unmoved. It was as if the earth itself wanted to see what humans could make from nothing. When the builders finished, they did not celebrate. They stood quietly, watching how sunlight shifted across the stone, how each wall cast a shadow that moved like time itself. The structure was not grand, but it was true. Every line carved by patience, every curve born of endurance. The desert winds would wear it down one day, but that was part of the promise. Everything man creates must eventually return to sand. What mattered was that for a while something existed here because someone dared to build it. She often thought of that kind of creation, not as architecture, but as a way of living. To build something within yourself when the world gives you nothing. To take the raw, shapeless material of existence and form it into meaning. Each thought, each act of patience, each moment of endurance was a brick, a wall, a quiet hall of being. She began to see her own life this way. The work, the repetition, the struggle, they were not emptiness. They were her materials. The way she carried herself, the way she kept calm, the way she refused bitterness, these were her tools. She was building something, though no one else could see it. Not a house, not a monument, but a space within her mind where peace could live. Creation, she learned, did not always need beauty. Sometimes it needed only presence. To continue shaping, to continue adding, even when no one noticed. That was how the inner structure held. Invisible, but strong. At night, when the wind outside her small room sighed like sand moving across stone, she would think of those ancient builders. Their work still standing in the desert, half ruined, but still whispering the truth, that what is made with intention does not vanish. The body may fade, the hands may stop, but what was shaped in stillness remains. And so, each day, she built, slowly, quietly, the unseen architecture of her own existence. In the beginning, solitude frightened her. The quiet felt endless, and the absence of voices pressed against her like cold air. But over time, she discovered that loneliness could become a companion, not a shadow to fear, but a space that allowed things to grow. When the noise of others faded, she began to hear something else, the faint rhythm of her own thoughts, the whisper of ideas that only appeared when the world was silent enough to let them speak. At first, it was uncomfortable. Silence revealed everything she had been avoiding, her doubts, her regrets, her small fears that had hidden beneath the sound of work and routine. But once she stopped running from them, she realized they were not enemies. They were seeds. Each carried something small but living inside it, a thought, a question, a possibility. And in solitude, they began to bloom. The loneliness she once hated became a kind of soil, rough, uninviting but rich in its own way. Ideas that could not survive in the noise began to root there. In the quiet, she found patterns, the rhythm of her breath, the pulse of the city through the walls, the flicker of firelight across her hands. These small details became teachers. From them, she learned patience. From them, she learned that creation was not about forcing something new into being, but about listening until it revealed itself. Sometimes the quiet stretched too far, and she felt the weight of emptiness again, but even that had a purpose. Loneliness taught her to befriend her own mind, to find comfort not in others, but in the calm presence of herself. There was strength in realizing she could sit alone without needing rescue. She began to see that solitude did not isolate her from the world. It connected her to it more deeply. When she was silent, she noticed everything, the trembling of air before rain, the slow sigh of wood cooling by the fire, the faint murmur of footsteps outside. The world was not empty. It was alive, waiting for someone to listen. And so she did. Her thoughts began to take shape like soft clay. She imagined the builders of the desert again, working in silence, their only audience the wind. They were alone too, but their solitude was sacred. No noise distracted them from the purpose of their hands. Creation did not need witnesses to be real. It only needed presence, the kind of attention that loneliness makes possible. She realized that everything truly beautiful was born this way, in silence, in patience, in the stillness between moments. The flower that blooms unseen, the idea that takes form in a quiet mind, the small act of kindness that no one notices. None of them need applause to matter. At night, when the city fell asleep and only the sound of her breath remained, she would write small thoughts on scraps of paper. A phrase, a line, a feeling. She did not know why. She only knew it brought her peace. It was her way of shaping the invisible, of giving form to what solitude whispered. Loneliness had stopped being an absence. It had become a room, a vast, gentle room filled with echoes of thought, memory, and possibility. Within it, she was no longer lost. She was creating. And in that quiet creation, she was free. Each stone lifted is a choice, a quiet declaration that creation is worth more than destruction. She thought of this often, especially during the hardest days. When the world seemed indifferent, when everything she built appeared too small to matter, she would remind herself, to create in any form is to resist decay. Every gentle act, every calm word, every effort made with care, all of it adds weight to what endures. She began to see that not all construction happens with hands. Some happens in thought, in patience, in the way one chooses to carry themselves through the hours. Every time she refused bitterness, she was building. Every time she met cruelty with understanding, she was adding another stone to the invisible architecture of her life. No one else could see it, but she could feel it. The slow, steady shaping of something within her that could withstand whatever passed outside. There were moments of doubt, of course. All builders know them. The pauses when the structure looks fragile, when the foundation seems uncertain. But she learned to keep working, even when belief wavered. The act itself became her meaning. It did not matter if the result would last 100 years or only a single breath. The value was in the motion, in the decision to shape rather than surrender. She thought of others like her, those who built without recognition. The woman who raised her children in silence. The man who repaired the same machine every day for 40 years. The child who shared their only piece of bread. They were all builders too, though the world rarely called them that. What they built could not be measured or photographed. It existed in the way their small efforts softened the hardness of life for someone else. She began to love this quiet kind of work, the work of shaping herself into something steadier, kinder, the kind of person who could stand calmly in the storm without letting it change her tone. There was dignity in that. To build is to say, I still believe in form, even in a world that falls apart. And with that belief came a new understanding of freedom. Freedom was not waiting for rescue, nor for perfect conditions. It was the choice to begin to shape the life she wanted out of what she already had. Freedom was not the absence of hardship. It was the refusal to let hardship dictate her design. At the end of each day, when the light dimmed and the air cooled, she would sit quietly and think of the walls within her, unseen, unspoken, strong. The world could change, could crumble, could forget. But what she built inside, her patience, her compassion, her calm, would stand. And that was enough. Time and the rhythm of the world. Time, she learned, was not something that moved past her. It was something she moved through. People spoke of time as if it were a river, flowing endlessly forward, carrying them along whether they wanted it to or not. But when she listened closely in the quiet hours between night and dawn, she realized the current was not outside of her. It was within. Every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness was another small wave in the ocean of her life. Humans have always tried to measure time, carving marks into stone, tracking the phases of the moon, dividing light and darkness into hours. But all those measurements are only language, not truth. Time does not belong to clocks or calendars. It lives in smaller things, in the slow cooling of tea, in the fading of a bruise, in the way morning light shifts across the same wall each day. It is not something that passes us by. It is something that happens through us quietly, constantly. There were days when she felt time rushing, when work and worry made the hours vanish, when the sky seemed to change colors too quickly. But there were also days when it felt still, when each minute expanded until it filled her entirely. The difference, she realized, had nothing to do with the world outside. It was all in her attention. Time stretched or folded depending on how deeply she lived inside each breath. The child she once was still lived inside her, unchanged, untouched by years. The older woman she would become was already forming in the quiet decisions of each day. Time did not divide her life into separate selves. It braided them together, past, present, future, each strand humming softly inside the other. She was not a traveler moving through time. She was a pattern that time wove into being. One evening, she sat by the window and watched the sky shift from gold to grey. The city moved beneath it, carriages rolling, people calling, lights appearing one by one. She felt the weight of the moment settle, thick and slow. The world outside was full of motion, yet inside something had stopped. She understood then that time was not a line, but a pulse. It quickened when she rushed, softened when she breathed, disappeared entirely when she was fully present. She began to play a small game with herself, moving slower on purpose, listening to how her body changed pace. Walking became a kind of meditation. Washing a cup, folding cloth, lighting a lamp. These ordinary acts became doorways into a gentler rhythm. The more she matched her breath to her movements, the less time seemed to slip away. It did not pass. It expanded. In the factory, surrounded by noise, she sometimes practiced the same thing. Amid the endless clatter, she would close her eyes for a heartbeat, feel the hum of the machines, and let her breath sync with the rhythm. In that instant, the hours lost their harshness. They became part of her. Not enemies stealing her life, but companions reminding her she was alive. She thought of the moon, how it waned and brightened without effort. Of the sun, rising not because it must, but because it does. The universe itself did not hurry, and still everything got done. Maybe that was the lesson. Time is not a master to serve, but a rhythm to join. To move with it gently instead of against it was to live fully. And so she stopped asking where the time had gone. She began to ask instead, where have I been within it? The more she slowed down, the more she began to see time not as a thief, but as a teacher. When she rushed, everything blurred. The hours collapsed into each other, and the days vanished without a trace. But when she moved gently, even the smallest things seemed to stretch and unfold. The morning light lingered longer. The sound of footsteps carried deeper. The world, she realized, had never been rushing. Only she had. Patience changed everything. It softened the edges of the hours. It gave her the ability to notice what had always been there. The rhythm of her own breath, the tiny pauses between sounds, the steady pulse beneath the noise of life. In those moments of stillness, she could almost hear time itself breathing with her, neither ahead nor behind, but exactly here. She began to understand that time was not cruel. It was neutral, waiting for her to choose how to meet it. When she hurried, It fled. When she rested, it returned and sat beside her like an old friend. Time did not punish, it reflected. It became whatever she brought to it, her chaos, her calm, her care. There were mornings when she rose before dawn and stood by the window, watching the world prepare itself for another day. The light touched the rooftops slowly, as if it knew there was no need to hurry. In that soft light, everything seemed to move in harmony. The fog lifting, the distant clatter of wheels, the faint hum of life waking. She felt her own body join that rhythm. Time was no longer something outside of her. It was something she carried quietly and endlessly. Sometimes she wondered if time could feel, if it was aware of how humans feared it, chased it, blamed it. Perhaps time, too, wanted to rest. Perhaps it only ran because people kept running after it. When she stopped, when she allowed herself to simply exist without counting, she felt time pause with her, the world holding its breath for a heartbeat. She noticed, too, how everything returns. The seasons repeat, faces reappear, feelings vanish only to come back in new forms. Even pain does not vanish, it transforms into understanding. Nothing is truly lost, only changed, recycled into another version of itself. Time is not a straight road, but a spiral, bringing her back to the same lessons until she finally learns to walk through them calmly. And as she sat one evening, the city quieting outside, she felt an odd peace settle over her. Time was no longer something to fear. It was a rhythm she could dance with, an ocean she could float in. The rush, the panic, the endless reaching, all of it had dissolved. What remained was the slow, steady awareness that life was already happening, perfectly, here, now. She came to see that time was never her enemy. It had never been chasing her, never trying to take anything away. It only revealed who she truly was beneath all the motion. Every passing hour, every fading season was a mirror, showing her what she valued, what she ignored, what she chose to hold on to, and what she learned to release. Time did not test her. It reflected her back to herself. When she began to notice this, her fear of loss started to dissolve. The things that had once felt urgent, the need to achieve, to prove, to be seen, now felt small against the vast patience of time. She realized that nothing truly belonged to her, not even the hours. They moved through her, not away from her. The only question was whether she would move with them in peace or resist them in vain. To live wisely, she decided, was to use time with intention, not to fill it, but to shape it. Some days were meant for motion, others were meant for stillness. Some were for building, some for resting. The art was not in controlling the hours, but in listening to them. Each moment had its own texture, its own quiet instruction. Morning asked for focus, afternoon asked for patience, night asked for release. She began to live in rhythm with these changes instead of fighting them. When her body felt slow, she rested without guilt. When her mind felt sharp, she worked with clarity. When sadness came, she did not rush to escape it. She let it pass through, knowing it too had a place in time's long breath. Every emotion, every pause, every ending was part of a larger pattern she no longer needed to understand, only to trust. Time, she realized, was not counting her life down. It was carrying her deeper into it. Each day was a gift of awareness, a chance to refine how she moved, how she spoke, how she cared. To waste time was not to do nothing. It was to live without attention, but to use time was to be present, fully, softly, without rush or fear. And so she no longer measured her days by what she accomplished, but by how well she inhabited them. A quiet morning, spent breathing, was worth more than a week of restless striving. A calm hour shared in kindness outweighed a day spent in noise. Time, once a thing she feared losing, had become the very ground she stood on, steady, constant, endless in its patience. The more she listened, the clearer it became. Freedom was not about having more time. It was about learning how to live inside it. The breath of freedom. It is strange how the smallest things endure the longest. Empires fall, cities fade, voices vanish into dust. Yet a single breath, taken fully, holds the whole world inside it. She had lived through many seasons, through the fog of labor and the grey weight of time, through solitude and silence. Different worlds, but the same heartbeat. What tied them together was not triumph or struggle, but the quiet will to continue, to breathe, even when the air was heavy. Human life, she realized, is one long thread of endurance. From the hands that built walls of stone to those that stitched cloth in dim rooms, every generation carried the same invisible promise: to keep living when nothing made sense, to choose calm over despair. The names change, the tools evolve, but the rhythm remains. Each life, however small, adds another note to the same vast and steady song. When she looked back, greatness no longer seemed loud or distant. It lived in the ordinary, in the mother who shared her last piece of bread, in the worker who continued despite the ache, in the stranger who still smiled at dawn. Freedom, she understood, was not about conquest or control. It was about gentleness, the courage to remain soft in a world that teaches hardness. Every age carries its trials: smoke, hunger, isolation, change. Yet beneath all of them runs the same truth, that nothing outside can truly imprison the mind that has learned peace. Freedom is not something given or won, it is something remembered. It waits quietly inside in the space between one breath and the next, where the world pauses and nothing more is required. She no longer sought meaning in distant places. Meaning lived here, in the simple rise and fall of her chest, in the quiet rhythm that had carried her through it all. The air moved in and out, and for a moment, she felt the world breathing with her. The walls, the fire, the unseen life beyond her window. Everything, she realized, shared the same pulse. There was no past or future left to chase. Only this stillness, this presence, this steady heartbeat that belonged to everything alive. Freedom was not the lifting of weight, but the grace to carry it lightly. As the night deepened, the city hushed and the flames softened to embers. She breathed once more, slow and even, her rhythm matching the silence. And in that silence, she understood, freedom had never been somewhere to reach. It had always been here, inside the breath that asked for nothing and gave everything.